Today I will show you how to graph a piecewise function. A piecewise function is any function that is broken up into different formulas. So for the example, 1 if x is less than -1, x squared plus 1 if x is greater than or equal to -1, and if x is less than or equal to 2. X plus 4 if x is greater than 2. Okay, so to do this successfully, we must know how the parent function looks like. So in this case, we go to 1, x is less than -1. We know that it will look something like this. And for the next section, when f at x is equal to x squared plus 1, we know that it's a parabola, so it will look something like this. And then for x plus 4, we know that it's just a line, so it will look something like this. So now let's start with the first section of the graph. Firstly, we must determine the interval of the function at that one section. So now when we move down to the graph, the function says that it must be less than -1. So we know that the function starts from here and then extends all the way back. So and it says that the function is less than, so then there's an open circle. After we have determined the intervals of that piece of the function, we must determine key points in order to graph that function. To do that, we must show what values are included in the function and what values are left out of that piece of the function. So we use a shaded in dot that shows that part of the function to show that it's included in that time interval. And then we use an open circle to show that that value is not included in that time interval. And now we must repeat this for every part of the function. So now we're going to go on to x squared plus 1. Since the time interval is greater than -1, we will not be covering the whole parabola. So we know that we'll be getting the parabola from somewhere around here. That's the piece of the function that we will be including. And now when we move on to graphing the piece, we know that it will be at -2 because the function says it can go from -1 all the way to +2. So now we must calculate the key points to graph this part of the function. So what we have is f at x is equal to x squared plus 1. And we know that that at -1, that's where the function begins. So now we find that f at -1, and we plug in -1 into the function. And what we get, f at -1 is equal to 2. And now we also know that the function goes all the way up to 2. So now we must find f at 2. So what we do is now we plug in 2 for x, and we square and add 1. So 2 squared is 4 plus 1 is equal to 5. Now we have found the value at x is equal to -1. And we found out that the value for when x is -1 is 2. And since this function starts at -1, we can plot this point beginning from here with a solid dot. And we can do the same thing with the second point. At f at 2, we found out that the y value was 5. So now we go to 2, and now we plot 5 all the way up here. And now since we know we took this part of the graph, it must go something like this, because we only covered that part of the function. Now we will graph the last part of the graph, x plus 4, when x is greater than 2. Okay, so now we use f at x is equal to x plus 4, and we plug in the value 2 to give us a reference point. So basically we get 2 plus 4 is equal to 6. So now we know that the value at when x is equal to 2, that we start at 6, but since it has to be greater than 2, we put an open circle to show that 2 is not included in that part of the graph. Now to make sure we have a proper graph, we must find out a second point. So let's plug in 5. F at 5 is equal to 5 plus 4 is equal to 9. So when the x value is 5, our y value will be 9. And now, because it's not restricted to anything, this part of the graph just continues going on to infinity. If we follow these steps, we come up to a graph like this. This first part of the graph is f at x is equal to 1 if x is less than negative 1. And then the second part over here is x squared plus 1 if x is greater than or equal to negative 1 and if x is less than or equal to 2. And then this last section of the graph over here is x plus 4 if x is greater than 2.